Brian says Lynette had the key when she fell, disabling the engine. He blames the rough weather that night for the accident. Fox Weather confirmed that there were wind gusts of up to 30 miles per hour.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy. We weren't wearing life jackets. It was sundown and the sun set. The wind blew us apart so fast.
Hooker says he paddled overnight and landed in Marsh Harbor, where he alerted authorities at 4 a.m. He was arrested 5 days later.
There's history of him choking her out and threatening to throw her overboard.
He didn't say she fell. He didn't say she slipped. He didn't say she lost her balance. He didn't say she went over the side. He said, and these are his exact words, said to a friend on a phone call he didn't know was being recorded, that she basically just bounced off the dinghy. Bounced, like a ball, like something you toss and forget. His wife of 25 years, the woman he called his life. And that one word, bounced, is what cracked this whole story wide open. Welcome to Hidden Case Detective, where forgotten cases finally get told. Unexplained disappearances, unresolved mysteries, cold cases that went silent while families fell apart waiting. We do not let these cases die. Subscribe and lock in. Now let's get into it. Let me tell you something about Lynette Ruth Hooker before we go anywhere else. She was not a tourist. She was not someone who just happened to be on a boat. She was a woman who had been on the water her entire life. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, said it plain. Lynette grew up around lakes, boats, sailing, and swimming. That wasn't a hobby. That was her whole life. She grew up in Michigan. She built a career. She worked at AT&T for years, long enough to accumulate more than $650,000 in her retirement account. She was that person, the one who showed up, put in the work, and built something solid. And then, at some point, she decided solid wasn't enough. She and her husband, Brian Hooker, sold their home in Kentwood, Michigan. They bought a Morgan 461, a 1980 sailboat, 46 feet long, that they picked up in Rockport, Texas. Lynette described it on their YouTube channel as a little rough on the edges. They spent about a year fixing it up, cleaning it out, making it theirs. They called it Soulmate, and then they sailed away from everything. The channel they built together was called the Sailing Hookers. Sea turtles, sunsets, cinnamon rolls baked in a solar oven on the deck, paddleboarding in Marsh Harbor, snorkeling with their tanks filled, the kind of content that makes people in cubicles stop scrolling and wonder what their life could look like. From the outside, it looked like a dream. Her last Instagram post was April 4th, 2026, the same day she disappeared. The caption said, "Not going anywhere for a while." She had no idea. Now, Brian Anthony Hooker, born November 1967, former United States Marine. He also worked at AT&T. That's actually where he and Lynette met. He served as the union steward there, which meant he was the person standing between workers and management. By multiple accounts from former colleagues, Brian was technically sharp. He knew phones, he knew systems, he knew how things worked mechanically. He wired the electrical system on the Soulmate himself. He was hands-on, capable, and confident on the water. He also had some history that is now very much part of this story. In 2005, Kentwood police investigated a child abuse incident at the Hooker home. Witnesses said Brian became upset during an argument, chased a child upstairs, pinned the child against a door, and placed both hands around the child's neck. One witness said the child was lifted partly off the ground. A report was completed and referred to the Michigan Family Independence Agency. The case went to trial. In 2006, Brian was acquitted by a jury. Then in February 2015, officers were called to the Hooker home at 1 in the morning for a domestic assault. Brian told police Lynette had struck him in the face multiple times. He had blood coming from his nose. Lynette told officers Brian had struck her in the forehead and choked her. Police noted that Brian had visible injuries. Lynette had none they could see. The warrant was reviewed by prosecutors and denied. There wasn't enough evidence to determine who started the assault. The case was closed. Now, neither of those incidents resulted in a final conviction against Brian. That matters, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But they are part of the documented record. And when a woman goes missing under the circumstances we are about to walk through, that record does not stay in a drawer. Because here is what the YouTube channel did not show you. In January 2024, Lynette reached out to her friend Marnie Stevenson, a woman she had met through the sailing community, and told her something she hadn't been posting about. She said, and I am quoting directly, "I guess it was too much closeness. We decided to call it quits. I'm not going back." She also told Marnie, "We were married 21 years. Our marriage lasted 6 weeks cruising." Like, she quit her career, sold her house, gave away everything she owned to be out on that boat, and 6 weeks in, she was done. She told Marnie, "Heartbroken, considering I quit my awesome career, sold my house, and gave away everything I owned to cruise." She went back to Michigan. She stayed at her mother's for about 2.5 months. She was looking for work. She was trying to figure out her next step. And then she went back to Brian. But there is something that happened during that separation that you need to hold on to as we go further into this case. Because Lynette's closest friend since 9th grade, a woman named Rachel Shaw. Rachel says Lynette told her that during their time on the boat, Brian had choked her, had her pinned, bruised her back badly, and then, the next day, told her something that Rachel repeated on camera. Lynette said, "He told me that he wished he would have finished the job and thrown me overboard. No one would have ever found me." Anyways, Lynette went back. Because that is often how these situations go. The shame, the history, the love that is real even when the danger is also real. Lynette told Rachel she was embarrassed. She didn't want people to know. She kept going back because she believed that as long as they weren't drinking, things would be fine. By March 2026, they were back on the water together. And by April 2nd, their last TikTok post showed them at Great Guana Cay, filling up their scuba tanks. They looked fine. They looked happy. They looked like the sailing hookers that their followers had come to know. 2 days later, Lynette was gone. On the evening of April 4th, 2026, Brian and Lynette left their boat, the Soulmate, anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay off Elbow Cay, and took their 8-foot, hard-bottom dinghy to shore. They had drinks at the Abaco Inn. They were seen at the pool. Lynette took a selfie, and then, at some point that evening, they headed back toward the Soulmate. Brian Hooker says Lynette fell off the back of that dinghy. He says he couldn't get to her. He says he floated with no engine, no oars, for 9 hours across 4 miles of open water and arrived on shore at 4 in the morning. Oh, so now, let's talk about what actually holds up. April 4th, 2026, a Saturday, the night before Easter Sunday. Brian and Lynette had been in the Bahamas since February. They had been snorkeling, paddleboarding, anchoring in different spots, living the life their followers watched from their phones. By all appearances, things were fine. That afternoon, They anchored the Soulmate in Aunt Pat's Bay off Elbow Cay, about 150 yards from shore, and took their dinghy in to spend some time at the Abaco Inn. It is a well-known spot for the sailing community, a pool, a bar, a place where live-aboard couples like Brian and Lynette were regular faces. The bartender that evening was a man named Ken, 38 years old, a local who had been working those waters his whole life. He served Brian twice that night, 2 rum and cokes over 2.5 hours. And in all that time, Ken told reporters, he never actually laid eyes on Lynette. She had gone straight to the pool when they arrived. She barely passed him. What Ken noticed, though, was the math. Because at some point, he started thinking about where Brian ended up that morning and how long it took to get there. And he said it himself. It was weird. The distance between the Abaco Inn and Marsh Harbor was only 4 miles, and it should not take anywhere near 9 hours to cover that. Moving on, because the timeline is where everything starts to crack. This is Brian Hooker's account, and I want to be precise about it because the details matter. He says they left the Abaco Inn dock at around 7:30 that evening, heading back to the Soulmate on their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy with a small electric motor. He says conditions turned rough. Winds around 20 knots, waves 2 to 4 feet. He says Lynette was in the back of the dinghy, and at some point during the crossing she went overboard. He says she went over with the boat's engine key. It was on a lanyard, and when she fell, it went with her. The engine cut off. He had no way to restart it. He says he tried to reach her. He says the wind and current took them in opposite directions. He threw a flotation cushion, one of the foam pads they used to sit on, toward where she went in. He says he could not tell if she got it. He says he yelled for her for about an hour. He says he eventually threw the anchor. He says by the time it caught, he was already a quarter to half a mile from where she had gone in. He says he could not get to her. He says he could not see her. He says it was dark, and then he says he drifted. With no engine, with one oar. The other pin had broken, and the oar went into the water. He paddled across 4 miles of open ocean for 9 hours, until he reached the shore near Marsh Harbor boatyards at around 4 in the morning. A security guard named Edward Smith was there. He said Brian came ashore looking exhausted and thirsty. Said another employee had flagged him down because a man had stumbled onto the property talking about a key and a woman. Brian asked for water. He said Lynette was still in the water. Smith called police. Officers arrived at around 5 in the morning. Brian was still speaking with them when Smith's shift ended at 7. That is the story. Hold it in your mind, because now we are going to walk through what the evidence says about it. Brian says they left the Abaco Inn dock at around 7:30. He says it was dark, or getting dark, when Lynette went over. He says the moon had not yet risen. He says the darkness is part of why he couldn't find her. But here is what the surveillance camera at the Abaco Inn captured. Lynette's daughter, Carly, and her boyfriend, Steve, when they traveled to the Bahamas to retrace the night, were shown surveillance footage from the inn. They saw Brian and Lynette walking toward the dock at around 6:38 that evening. 6:38. Sunset on April 4th, 2026 in the Abacos was at approximately 7:26, which means if they left the dock at 6:38, they were on that water in full daylight, not dusk, not dim, daylight, with another 45 minutes to an hour of usable light ahead of them. Jim Todd, a volunteer with the Hopetown Fire and Rescue, who was one of the first people to encounter Brian the following morning, and who went back out on the rescue vessel with Brian and police, confirmed it. He was at a restaurant near the water that evening, and he said it plainly. At 6:38, it was broad daylight. There was nothing ambiguous about the light. So when Brian says it was dark and he couldn't see her, and the surveillance says they left 52 minutes before he claims they did, those two things cannot both be true. One of them has to give. And the surveillance camera does not have a reason to lie. Make it make sense. Brian told his friend Blaine Stevenson in that recorded phone call that it was, and I am quoting directly, a little blow, like 20-some-odd knot winds that popped up. A little blow. But in his Facebook statement posted publicly on April 8th, he described what happened as, quote, unpredictable seas and high winds. So now which was it? A little blow or unpredictable seas? Because those are not the same thing. And the people who were actually on that water that night have something to say about both versions. Captain Bill was anchored directly beside the Soulmate that evening, right next to it. He and his friends experienced the same conditions in the same water. His assessment, stated publicly on a podcast, was that the weather in that area that night was not that bad. Ashley Banfield, a journalist who traveled to the Bahamas and spent 5 days investigating this case on the ground, obtained surveillance footage from the Firefly Inn, located just a quarter-mile north of where Brian says the incident happened. The footage from 7:15 that evening shows the water. Flat, calm, no whitecaps, no 2 to 4 foot waves. A boat going out in the footage is not even spraying water on its sides. And then a member of the Hopetown Fire and Rescue went back out to the exact location Brian described, under the same 18-knot wind conditions, to test it himself. He came back and said, and I am going to quote this because it matters, I gotta eat my words because I told you before I thought it was kind of rough, but I did an absolute replicate wine condition test, and it was calm in the lee of Elbow Cay with exactly the same 18-knot winds blowing. It was calm. The waters were absolutely not 2 to 4 feet. They weren't even 1 foot. It was calm. So the conditions Brian described to explain why he couldn't find his wife, the darkness, the rough water, the screaming wind, are contradicted by surveillance footage, by a witness who was anchored right beside them, and by a replication test done by the very people who searched for Lynette. 4 miles, 9 hours. Let's sit with that math for a minute. A ferry makes that exact crossing in 20 minutes. A captain who has worked those waters for years said he once swam it in under 3 hours. And here is the thing about how the Sea of Abaco works. Marine experts who reviewed the wind and tidal patterns for that night said the prevailing conditions would not naturally have carried an uncontrolled dinghy from Aunt Pat's Bay westward to the eastern shore of Marsh Harbor. The water and wind were pushing things in a different direction, toward Lubbers Quarters Cay, to the north. So the drift Brian describes, 4 miles in the right direction, delivered exactly to a point near a boatyard where he could come ashore and find help, does not match what the water was actually doing that night. And then there are the life jackets. When the dinghy was eventually recovered, there were 2 life jackets inside it, unused. Brian says he threw a foam cushion, the kind they sat on, toward Lynette. Not a life jacket, not the actual safety equipment designed to keep a person afloat. A seat cushion. Jim Todd put it plainly. You could pick up a real life jacket, tie the dinghy to your ankle, put one on yourself, and go in after your wife with the other. They were about 150 yards from shore. The water in many parts of that area is shallow enough to stand in. Lynette's daughter Carly said, when she went to the location herself and stood there, Her mother could have swum a couple of feet and stood up. Brian did not jump in. He did not throw an anchor first to hold his position. He did not use a life jacket. He did not fire a flare until, by his own account, he had already drifted nearly half a mile away. And when he finally did fire flares, witnesses say they didn't come from a drifting dinghy in the water. They came from the Soulmate. This is one of the most significant pieces of this entire case, and it has not gotten nearly enough attention. Multiple witnesses on Elbow Cay, more than 3 people altogether, all seeing the same thing at the same time, reported seeing a flare fired at approximately 8 in the evening on April 4th. Not from a small dinghy drifting in the water, from the sailboat, from the Soulmate, the 46-foot catch that was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay, the boat that Brian told investigators he and Lynette never made it back to. At 8 o'clock, by Brian's own internal timeline, accounting for the alleged incident, the drifting, the anchor, the yelling, a flare from his dinghy would have made sense. But the witnesses say the flare came from the Soulmate. Nobody was supposed to be on that boat. And then there is what a security camera caught. A camera belonging to a man named Dean Zamzil, whose home on Lubber's Quarters faces east across the Sea of Abaco toward Aunt Pat's Bay. Dean's camera runs continuously. Ashley Banfield, along with Dean's daughters, spent hours going through that footage frame by frame. At 7:47 that evening, 17 minutes after Brian claims they left the Abaco in dock, the camera captured a significant light event at the location where the Soulmate was anchored. A flash consistent with what multiple mariners described as automatic security spotlights mounted on the stern, the kind that trigger when someone approaches the back of the boat from the water, the kind that go on when someone comes aboard. 13 minutes later, right around 8 o'clock, witnesses saw the flare from the Soulmate. Then at 12:27 in the morning, the same camera caught another light event at the same location, what appeared to be a flashlight moving around near the boat, the stern lights activating again, as if someone had returned. 5 minutes after that, at 12:32, another event. Multiple flashes from what looked like a moving flashlight. Brian Hooker said nobody was on that boat. He said they never made it back. But the security camera, pointed directly at where the Soulmate was anchored, caught light activity at 7:47, at 12:27, and at 12:32. At all 3 of those times, Brian was supposed to be somewhere else entirely. On April 8, 2026, police boarded the Soulmate. They executed a search warrant. And when they walked off that boat, they carried with them a digital video recorder, digital tablets, and cell phone-related equipment, all described in the warrant as material evidence related to a missing person causing bodily harm. Causing bodily harm, not accidental drowning, not unfortunate circumstances. Causing bodily harm. That is the language a judge signed off on. And in any legal system rooted in common law, a judge does not sign off on that language without a documented basis for it. Those devices have not been returned. As of the time of this episode, investigators are still reviewing them. Here is why that matters. The Soulmate had a Starlink satellite internet system on board. Lynette's Apple Watch, the pink one she is seen wearing in her social media videos, the one that appears on her wrist in a photo taken at the Abaco Inn pool, was later found on the Soulmate. Not in the water, on the boat. If Lynette went overboard from the dinghy and never made it back to the Soulmate, how did her watch get there? A former FBI special agent named Pamela Coffin-Daffer, who spoke to Newsweek about this case, was direct about what investigators need to focus on. She said they really need to look at his Google search history. She said the entire criminal case could live or die based on what is found in that history. And there is one more piece of the digital picture that belongs here. Brian Hooker was fired from AT&T, the same company where Lynette built her career. The reason, confirmed by sources and court documents, was that he had manipulated the GPS on his company van to mask his location, to make the van appear to be somewhere it was not. A man who understood exactly how to falsify location data, living on a vessel with a tracking system, whose vessel's tracking system went offline at 9:30 on the night of April 4th and came back online at 8:30 the following morning. The exact moment Brian stepped back aboard the Soulmate with a Royal Bahamas police force officer. Blaine Stevenson, who reviewed the vessel's prior month of tracking logs, confirmed to Ashley Banfield that in all those prior logs, the AIS system had never been offline for more than 2 to 2.5 hours. On the night of April 4th, it was offline for 11 hours. So what? Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth, did not stay home and wait for updates. She flew to the Bahamas herself with her boyfriend, Steve Hansen. She sat down with the Royal Bahamas Police Force for 3.5 hours. They handwrote everything, 4 pages front and back. She met with the U.S. Coast Guard. She boarded the Soulmate for the first time since her mother disappeared. She described stepping onto that boat as eerie. She kept expecting her mother to come around a corner. She collected what she could carry: a headband, her mother's gold L necklace, the small charm Lynette wore almost every day, a picture frame Carly had made for her, a piece Lynette's mother had sewn by hand. She flew home to Michigan, wearing the headband on her own head. She has been wearing it in every interview since. And what she said when she went to the spot where her stepfather says her mother went overboard, standing there, looking at the water, looking at the shore. She said her mother could have swum a couple of feet and stood up. She said the story sounds more sketchy to her now than it did before she went. She also told reporters something that the whole record of this case makes impossible to dismiss. She said that 2 years before her mother disappeared, Brian had threatened to throw Lynette overboard. And then she said, "The fact that this is actually happening makes me believe there is more to the story." Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, 76 years old, was in Florida waiting for news. She told Ashley Banfield,
"I have many, many questions that I still really would like answered."
On April 8th, the same day investigators boarded the Soulmate, Brian Hooker was taken into custody for questioning. He was held for 5 days. The Bahamian legal clock extended multiple times. He was questioned in connection with what his own Bahamian attorney, Terrell Butler, confirmed was a potential charge of causing harm resulting in death. He was released on April 13th without charges, not cleared, released. The Royal Bahamas Police Force Commissioner confirmed to NBC News that Brian Hooker remains a named suspect who has not been cleared and can be rearrested. He left the Bahamas the next day. He had said publicly, on camera, that his sole focus was finding Lynette and that he would not leave until she was found. He left the next day. Anyways, here is the simplest and most damning fact in this entire case. The Sea of Abaco is an enclosed, shallow lagoon. In many areas, it is 4 to 15 feet deep. Crystal clear. You can see turtles on the sandy bottom from a moving boat. It does not hide people. Every expert, every mariner, every fire and rescue volunteer, every person who has spent years on that water says the same thing. If someone goes in, the water gives them back. Every time. A charter captain named Mo Monestein, who has worked those waters for 15 years, said it to Fox News Digital in terms that need no interpretation. He said, "It is very hard to disappear because we are so close to land. So if you do fall overboard and drown, somebody will see you the next day. Again, we can see the bottom. I would see a human body. Somebody would see something. Somebody would say something." 25 days of professional searching, dive teams, aerial surveillance, drone technology, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the United States Coast Guard, cadaver dogs along the northern shore of Lubbers Quarters Cay. Every resource available deployed to that specific body of water. Nothing. Not Lynette. Not her dry bag. The bright green waterproof bag she was carrying that night, the kind that floats, that Brian says she went into the water holding. Not the paddle he says he lost. Not a single piece of physical evidence consistent with a person entering that water at the location he described. The water has been searched. It did not find her, and the water does not lie. As of late April 2026, the search shifted from the water to the land, which means we need to talk about a place almost nobody knew existed. A ruined marina on the northern edge of Marsh Harbor that Lynette filmed herself, that Brian explored with her and with her daughter Carly, that almost no local could identify when shown the photos. And that sits in a very specific position on the map relative to everything that happened that night. Lynette filmed it herself. She had one of those 360 cameras, the kind where the selfie stick disappears in the footage. And she used it everywhere. Every excursion, every discovery, every off-the-beaten-path adventure they went on. She pointed that camera at everything she found interesting. And at some point, before April 4th, she pointed it at a ruined marina on the northern edge of Marsh Harbor. Broken docks, collapsed buildings, a pool with the decorative tiles torn clean off the walls, pathways that looked like they had not been walked in decades. The kind of place that makes you think it has been abandoned since the 50s. Except Hurricane Dorian only came through in 2019. In one frame of that footage, a sign comes into view: Snapper Point Marina. Before Dorian, it was stunning. Aerial photos show a protected waterway, white sand beaches, covered slips for yachts up to 90 feet, a gorgeous pool overlooking the Sea of Abaco, a full high-end resort. Dorian hit as a Category 5 with winds at 185 miles per hour and a storm surge of 23 feet. It did not leave much standing, and nobody rebuilt it. Nobody went back. It just sat there, slowly being reclaimed by salt air and vegetation. Ashley Banfield spent weeks trying to identify the location from Lynette's photos and videos. She sent images to locals, to fire and rescue personnel, to people who had lived in that area their whole lives. Over and over, the answer came back the same. Never heard of it. Cannot place it. Do not recognize it. That is not because the place does not exist. It is because Dorian erased it from the community's active memory. It is still there physically. It sits right at the northern edge of Marsh Harbor near Mermaid Reef. But nobody has a reason to go there. Tourists do not go there. Locals do not go there. It has become a geographic blind spot. Present, invisible. Brian Hooker had been there. The whole route, from the Soulmate's mooring, north to Snapper Point, and back south to where he showed up, is not 9 hours of helpless drifting. It is a sequence of short, deliberate moves along a coastline a person would have to know very well to navigate in the dark. Like, Brian knew it very well. Let me bring it back to Rachel Shaw one more time, because everything she said 2 years ago is sitting right in the middle of this case now. Rachel has known Lynette since 9th grade. She described her as one of the most supportive friends she ever had. And she told Ashley Banfield on camera what Lynette told her during that separation in early 2024. She said that during a fight on the boat, Brian had choked Lynette, had her pinned, bruised her back so badly she photographed it. And the next day, he told her something. Rachel repeated it, word for word. She said Lynette told her, "He told me that he wished he would have finished the job and thrown me overboard. No one would have ever found me." Rachel told Lynette to leave. Lynette said she was 10 minutes from the airport. Rachel told her to get on the plane. And then the next day, Lynette texted a photo of the dinner Brian had made and went quiet. Rachel said she sent her a warning when Lynette decided to go back to him. She told her, in person, at dinner, the night before Lynette returned to the boat, that if anything ever happened to her, if she ever went missing or could not speak for herself, she was going to point the finger at Brian. And Lynette told Brian she had said that. Brian's response, according to Rachel, was 3 words. He said, "That's fair." Rachel said chills went down her spine. That was 2 years ago. And then on April 4th, 2026, Lynette Hooker went into the water and never came back. Moving on, because the record also shows something else that does not sit right. Brian called Carly, Lynette's daughter, the day after her mother disappeared. Carly described the call to reporters. She said he sounded monotone and relaxed, like he was giving a status update, not like a man whose wife of 25 years had just disappeared in the dark. She said she was in shock, not just at the news, but at his tone. He later left her a voicemail about the flotation cushion that had been found. He said, and this is the voicemail, "Hello, honey. I just got a call from Hopetown Search and Rescue, and they have found a flotation device that I threw to Mom when she fell overboard. And so they haven't found her yet, but they can now focus all of their efforts in a smaller area. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye." That is the voicemail a man left for his stepdaughter 3 days after her mother vanished, about a foam cushion. And then there is the recorded call with Blaine Stevenson. The one Brian did not know was being captured. 40 minutes of unguarded conversation, one day before his arrest, with someone he trusted. In that call, talking freely about the moment his wife of 25 years entered the water, he chose one specific word, not fell, not slipped, not went over. He said she basically just bounced off the dinghy. That word has never left this case. It should not. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorney Terrell Butler has stated that he categorically and unequivocally denies all wrongdoing. Brian himself said publicly, "I never harmed Lynette and never would harm Lynette." Those are his positions. They are on the record, and they matter because this case has not been resolved. The U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation remains open. The Royal Bahamas Police Force investigation remains active. The devices seized from the Soulmate, the DVR, the tablets, the phone equipment, are still being reviewed by investigators. The AIS data is still part of the record. The Apple Watch data exists, and investigators have it. As of early May 2026, the U.S. Coast Guard was still asking the public for information. They were specifically looking for the owner of a sailboat that had been moored near the Soulmate on the night of April 4th. Someone on that boat may have seen something. Someone may have footage from that evening, a photo, a video of the sunset. anything taken near the Abaco Inn or the water around Elbow Cay between 6 and 9 that night. If that is you, or if you know someone who was there is an app. It is called CGIS Tips. You can find it in any app store. Tips are anonymous. Investigators are still working this case, and they need what you have. 40 days after Lynette Hooker disappeared, federal investigators made their move. The Soulmate, the boat she gave up everything to live on, was intercepted by the U.S. Coast Guard while leaving the Bahamas. It is now docked at Fort Pierce, Florida. Crime tape wraps the hull. Investigators have been inside, processing evidence. No body has been found. No charges have been filed. Brian Hooker denies everything. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She had been swimming since she was a child. She lived on the water for 4 years. She knew every creak of that boat, every shift of the wind, every feature of the coastline she called home. She documented her life with a curiosity and a warmth that came through in every frame. She found beauty in places that had been forgotten. She walked through ruins with her camera and showed the world what a hurricane had left behind. She did not know, when she filmed those broken docks and that stripped-out pool at Snapper Point Marina, that she might have been leaving behind something that mattered more than a travel vlog. She left us a map, in her videos, in her photographs, in the casual and loving documentation of a life she chose fully. She pointed the camera everywhere she went, and the places she showed us are now part of an investigation that is not over. Her mother, Darlene, is still waiting. Her daughter, Carly, stood where her mother was supposed to have fallen, looked at the water, and said her mother could have stood up in it. And she has not stopped asking questions. Lynette deserves the truth. Her family deserves the truth. And this case deserves to stay in the light for as long as it takes to get there. If you have information about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force or the United States Coast Guard. Download the CGIS Tips app and submit what you know anonymously. Both investigations remain active. This has been Hidden Case Detective. We do not let these cases die. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Lynette's story is not over, and neither are we.